Welcome to Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions to help animals. I'm Missy Woodward. Today we have a very interesting guest, Bernie Williams. He's a producer and also an activist for animals. Welcome, Bernie. How are you doing?
Fine. Glad to be here.
Well, so you are a producer of films. Now, this is somebody different than what we would usually have on our show. We might have people that are animal activists that, let's say, have a rescue group or different things, which I think you are definitely involved with animal rescue with dogs. But let's get a little background on who you are as far as your career, and then go into where you've come into this animal career, as it were.
Well, I have produced probably about 25 movies. My first movie was Clockwork Orange at the age of 27. And then I just continued in making movies, and then I had the taste of Hollywood. And I came here, I produced a movie called Barry Lyndon for Stanley Kubrick, and we got 5 Oscars. I arrived in Beverly Hills and went, I got to tie myself to a tree. I'm not going back. I love the weather. I love the passion of the filmmaking community. So I was hooked, and I moved here in '79, and I love it. And I continue to make movies here. A lot of comedies, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob, those kind of movies. I've always believed in, Clockwork Orange was a bit testy, but I have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. And all the movies I want to make are family movies that you don't have to apologize for.
Great.
I don't believe in gratuitous sex, gratuitous violence. I don't think we should ever use bad language in a movie. That's just awful writing. So I've had a wonderful career in making movies, and still am. And my last movie is Charlotte's Web, which was a wonderful film for me to produce with partner producers. But I was the hands-on producer and responsible for everything that goes on day to day, specifically the animals and the training and the farms and so on. So I was always grateful that 9 years ago I woke up one morning and I said, hey, I'm a lucky guy. I got this great life. I love making movies. I get paid well. I travel the world first class. What can I do to give back? And that was my turning point towards animals, because I grew up with German Shepherds since I was a baby. My father loved dogs, and so I went, I'm going to start looking after dogs. And once I got into it, I realized clearly all animals are defenseless. They can't speak for themselves, and we have to take care of them. And there's a lot of animals in distress, whether it's dogs, cats, factory farming, which is just dreadful, zoos. I mean, I just feel sad for any animal out of its own environment in captivity.
How many movies do you think of those that you made had animals in them?
Not too many, and I always have a voice saying, please don't use a dog in this scene to show a bad dog. I don't want you to show a Rottweiler. I don't want you to show a guard dog being horrible. So I'd always try and twist the director's arm and change the ingredients of a scene, so we didn't show animals in a bad light. Yeah.
Because people always talk about animals being exploited for somebody else, and in the old westerns, in the old ways when before the humane societies and different groups were able to come in and make a stand for animals. Yeah. Animals were just used to whatever means.
You just reminded me, I was an assistant director on a film with Charlton Heston in Egypt called Gordon of Khartoum. And the second unit director was the famous director Yakimar Kanat, who was the guy who was on Stagecoach with John Wayne, and he was the man who jumped on the horses and went along and underneath, which gave Spielberg the idea for Indiana Jones. And so we were actually doing falling horses at that time illegally, because yes, some of the stunt guys used to train horses to would fall. But what he did was he invented a rig called a running W, and the horses' legs were tied by cable, which went up to their stomach, and then they would go back about 50 feet, and then it would whip the horse, and it would run as fast as it could till it got to the end of a cable, and then the front legs would come up and cut the cable, hopefully, which it did most times, and then the horse would go over. I used to hate watching this, I really did. And not to put a sort of funny tone to it, but he did say, let's try it on a camel. and he put this on the camel, and the camel doesn't run like that. He goes like that, like, you know.
Right.
And this camel just went like this, and then we all pulled the cable, and we just let 4 legs went together, and he just fell over. He said, I guess that won't work, Bernie. But now it's illegal to use that, thank God, because of animal watchdogs, which is great. And it should be. And also the other problem is when they train horses by pulling them to the left or right, when those horses go back to wherever they come from, some unfortunate riders may go like that, and they find themselves doing a stump fall.
Oh.
So they have to be re-educated.
Right.
But there's more awareness about animal safety in movies, mainly with the major studios, because they don't want any bad publicity.
Now, you had something to do with making a big change in that a couple of years back. What was that?
Yeah, I remember working, somebody was telling me about some cruelty going on in a movie, and I said, you know, why don't you report it? And they go, yeah, but I might get fired. And I thought, ooh, people are in fear of the boss. Well, I'm a boss in sorts, but I'm always anti-bosses, so I don't mind standing up to them. And because that's the rebellious spirit of me, which thank God I've always had. But I called Humane Society and I said, you know what, you should have an 800 number for anybody on a film set or a TV set or wherever where animals are not being treated properly. And then they can call anonymously and you can go and investigate. And they did create that number, which thank God they did.
That's great. So how do people find out about that number if they wanted to do something?
I think if they call the Humane Society of the United States, they'll get their number. There's offices in Los Angeles, Hollywood.
And there can be anonymous
Yeah,
tips, and then
they could just phone up, say, this is Bernie Williams, I've just seen a dreadful thing happen. Please don't quote my name, but it's stage 26 at such and such studio.
So in essence, I mean, this is what I find interesting about what people do that get involved in helping animals. They use something that's their natural talent and ability, whatever industry they've been in. Let's say they get involved with the animals, then they start to use that talent and ability to help the animals. So you being a producer, you understanding the rules and regulations, and you having experienced those things, you finally came up with a solution with your own background to say, this is how we can help the animals. And that's what's so great. People can just simply take what they already know, that they already use in their business experience, and turn it into something that can help animals. And that's really the important thing, is that people need to know, you know, I was an accountant, how can I help animals? Well, what organization doesn't need accounting help and help with their finances? Everybody can do something to help animals, and everybody can be a watchdog. And they don't have to worry. There's so many ways to anonymously help animals as well, besides just your donation checks, which always help. Now, you've always loved dogs. So tell me about, I believe it's Malibu Dogs?
Malibu Dog Adoptions.
MalibuDogAdoptions.org. Tell me what you're doing there.
Well, you know, I started, I had a part wolf dog, which was just a wonderful dog, which I got from a ranch in Montana. And I heard about a boarding kennel that this place needs organizing, so Bernie Williams, producer, became a producer of this shelter and started putting it together and getting it established and getting volunteers, and it became a learning process for me. I mean, I did learn from the people that own this boarding kennel about dog behavior and dog handling, and you know, dogs 3 or more are a pack, and a lot of dogs that come into shelters have been abused, abandoned, and they have emotional issues. And most of them that get abandoned, it's really unfair. I mean, people use all sorts of excuses, like today, people are abandoning animals, cats and dogs, because of their foreclosure. And so more animals are being put down because the shelters are overcrowded. So,
or they use that as an excuse that the shelters are overcrowded due to these animals coming in, but
sadly,
that's another
sadly.
subject.
So anyway, I just started to organize volunteers, but the thing that I said to them, which is the same thing I say to people coming to the movie industry, you know, everybody wants to be a director, everyone wants to be a writer, everyone wants to be a producer. And I go, yeah, sure, that's okay. But you've got to learn the trade first. You can't just jump in at the top. And if you want to get involved with movies, or if you want to get involved with animal rescue, you have to commit to it, focus on it passionately every day. You just can't come in and say, oh, I just took a dog for a walk, I'm really helping animals. Well, that's a feel-good person. We don't want feel-good people in volunteering. We want people that want to come in and say, I'll clean the poop, I'll wash the kennels, I'll groom the dogs, I'll walk them, I'll take them home and let them be socialized. I mean, those are the much stronger commitments. And, you know, I do get a lot of people who want to help animals, but they really want to help themselves. It becomes about them and not about the animals. And the thing that we must all remember about animals, they can't speak for themselves. They are defenseless at all times. And the things I emphasize with all animal owners or guardians, which they should be called today, please microchip, please put a collar on and a tag, go pay the shelter your license. It's only, you know, $12, $15, whatever it is. Because if these dogs get out through gardeners not opening doors properly and closing them, this dog is defenseless. He's in the street, he's going to end up in a shelter, he's going to be put down maybe. And
if he wasn't spayed or neutered, then he is going to jump out of the fence to go roam.
Exactly, and that's very important. And also, there are enough dogs around in shelters. We don't need puppy mills. Puppy mills are cruel, and thank God for Oprah. She did a wonderful show recently to show the appalling conditions of these puppy mills. And they don't understand why people want to take dogs and take them into a home. When we adopt dogs, we always ask a trick question. Do you want an inside dog or an outside dog? And the moment they say outside, they go, you know what, this dog's been taken.
Right.
Because dogs are pack animals. They've been socialized. They need to be bonded with humans. That's why humans want them as comfort. Not tied up on a chain, not out in the yard to bark if someone comes by, not to be forgotten. These poor dogs live really incredibly lonely lives. And so, the more you get to know these animals and the more you get to work with them, the more you're connected. And then it goes beyond that. Because you go, okay, well, I'm just focusing on dogs. That's pretty, yeah, I better start looking at the rest of the world. And then you start networking into farm animals and zoos and dog fighting and cockfighting, and suddenly you think, oh, the world is horrific when it comes to animal care. And so I was thrilled to do Charlotte's Web, because if it hadn't been for my involvement with dog rescue, I wouldn't have thought about what am I going to do with 47 pigs. At the end of that show, we've domesticated them. They've all got names. They've all got collars, and they run around, and they've been in air-conditioned and heated accommodation. They've been given the best food. They're not going to go back to a factory farm. So when the animal trainers confronted me and said, well, okay, Bernie, we're going to wrap everything up and we're going to send the animals back, I go, well, where are they going to go? Where are the cows going to go? Where are the horses going to go? Where are the geese going to go? Where are the sheep going to go? We had sheep doing high fives.
Oh my gosh.
We had sheep that could dance. I mean, it's amazing. They're not stupid.
No.
And so I said, well, I'm going to find homes for them. The guy said, you know, you just worry about producing, Bernie. We take care of the animals. I said, well, I'm going to find homes for them. So you guys go back to LA and we'll find a way. And I sat down and I thought, I've just made the most stupidest statement of my life, because I haven't got a clue.
Right.
If I can find a home for one pig, let alone 47 pigs.
But you're a producer. You've got on your producer hat. And you're
it's called I Love Challenges. So you start off with a pig that big, but he's really going to be big. So thank God one of the art department crew went down to Tasmania and they saw a sticker in a shop that said Save Babe, Animals of Australia. So I called them and found out that James Cromwell, the actor, is their spokesperson, and he goes around giving lectures with their pig Bella to educate children and say, look, we can't turn the whole world into vegetarians and vegans. People are going to eat meat and animals, but wouldn't it be nice if those animals at least had a life in an open field with the sun and the stars, and where the mothers could actually have time with their calves and whatever, rather than have animals from factory farms.
Right.
And that's a good cause, because when I went to see a movie called Chicken Run, which was an animated film, and the lady in the film goes to kill a chicken with an axe and a bucket, all the children in the audience went, "No, no, please, no." Yet those same kids would go outside and buy a bag of chicken McNuggets. They don't relate the two together.
Right.
So that's why I enjoy people like James Cromwell doing what they're doing, because they're telling people reality. Anyway, so the people from Animals Australia came to the set, saw all these pigs doing their acts, and we had built, with the late Stan Winston, $2 million worth of animatronic pigs to do all the looks that real pigs can't do, and so on. And they couldn't tell the difference between a real pig and our dummy pigs, and they were hooked. And I said, "Can you help me?" And they said, "Yes, we'll find you homes for life." I went, "Wow, that's a huge commitment." They said, "Hey, if you can give us $75,000, we'll make it work." So I called the studio and I said, "I need $75,000. And they go, "What for?" And I go, "I'm going to find homes for 47 pigs and cows and sheep and blah, blah, blah." And they go, "Bernie, we'll get back to you." So I gave it a few days, and I called, and I was very devious, and I went, "Guys, you're going to spend about $80 million making this movie. You're going to spend about $40 million selling it. What happens if a reporter says Wilbur became a bacon sandwich last summer? Where do we send the money, Bernie?" So I got the money straight away.
And look at the free press you get by saying what you did
Yes,
by doing this.
we did. We got a lot of free press, but the gracious thing was the studio said, "You have taught us something we hadn't even thought of. We are the filmmakers. We send money to make the movies. We're not there on a day-to-day. And because of your background with animal rescue, you've just told us that any film we get involved with, Paramount this is, from now on, we're going to want to know what happens to those animals."
Great.
So it was a great education for all of us. And I just went, thank you, God, because I can't imagine if a non-caring, and I don't mean this rudely, but let's say another producer who wasn't involved with the animal world, what would his decisions have been? And where would those pigs be today?
Well, think of all the movies that have been made with any sort of farm animals.
Yeah.
And you wonder, I mean, there are people that bring their troops of chickens in, or their troops of whatever, that are trained.
Right.
And they have them, and a trained dog or a trained cat, they're priceless because they're going to use them in the next film and the next film and the next film. But ones that you're getting in mass, like you're talking about, you have to do something with them.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is most people, sadly, will say, "I can't go to a shelter because I get so upset looking at these poor animals." Well, guys, go to the shelter. You might take one home. There'll be one less poor animal for another person to come in and see. They're actually, Santa Monica shelter is incredibly clean and human friendly. So, go to the shelters. Don't be intimidated by sadness.
And take children there
Yes.
to learn why spay and neutering is so important.
Correct.
Because why would these animals be there? The numbers would be decreased. I think a lot of it also starts with the children.
Yes.
And people, take your families there as a learning lesson and to pick out your next family member.
Yeah, I mean, I have five grandchildren. When I adopted my 3 new orphans this year, I take my grandchildren and I say to the people, I need dogs that are going to be safe with the children. I cannot take a chance that anything could happen, because children hug animals. They also pull them. Be very careful with children. And we introduce the dogs to the grandchildren, and if we get a sense it's going to be okay, then that's fine. But everything's doable. I mean, most shelters today will say, if it doesn't work out, bring the dog back. Bring the cat back. You're not committed for life. And I find the same thing about farm factories. When I start talking about farm factories, people say, "Oh, I don't want to hear it." I go, "Really? You don't want to hear it? You don't want to hear about..." There's a marvelous book called The Pig Who Sang to the Moon by Jeffrey Masson, who is from Berkeley. He's a professor. He wrote a book about every animal emotions. And when I read this book, which I gave to nearly all the crew on Charlotte's Web, I said, "You got to read this, guys." Cows, mothers cry for days and days when their calves are taken away from them. Geese have their feathers pulled out for quills. I mean, for bedding and all these things that go on with animals, and you suddenly realize and know that all animals have emotions. All animals are terrified, have They have fear, they have love, they have fun.
Sentient beings.
Yes. Then, you know, God bless my sister today. We were talking about my father who just passed away, and we were talking about the dog's ashes, and she goes, well, I can't mix the ashes with my father and mother because they're just animals. And I go, you know, don't say that to me. They're not just animals. They're feeling creatures. And they give us love. They give us unconditional love. We don't give them unconditional love as much as they do. You can tell a dog off, or you can, you know, sometimes I have to hit my little puppy and go, no, you mustn't do that. They'll come back and lick my face 2 seconds later, and then I feel terrible. So
and your work on Charlotte's Web was so impressive to people that you won a Humane Society, or the Genesis Award.
Yeah.
And so tell us about that.
Well, I was very flattered because I was invited by the Humane Society to go to the Hilton Hotel, and we were in competition for the Genesis Award. And God bless the fellow producers of the film. Jordan Kerner was the creative, and it was his company that made the film. And I had other executive producers who were involved with the rights or involved with Nickelodeon or whatever it is. But they said, let Bernie go and pick it up, because he's taught us all about animal world. And I converted a few vegetarians.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. But so that was great.
And it's really by your actions.
Sure.
And your expressions and your energy about something, like you talked about your passion. You don't have to convert them all. What I try to do is I take some of the videos, let's say, that people have, and some people at work, like, let's say they say, I love pigs. I said, well, here's some more about pigs.
Right.
And it's about factory farming with the pigs. And then when they
Right.
watch it, they go, I can't eat it the same way I ate it before.
Right.
The knowledge, with knowledge,
Right.
becomes everything, you know. You
Well,
can't go backwards.
Yeah, the thing is that we took the little piglets from 3 weeks old, so they didn't know what their real world was. But I went to get the mother out. After getting the 47 pigs homes, I suddenly realized Mum's still at the farm. And I went to the factory farmer and I said, I need to get Alice out. That's our mother that's in the film. Oh, she's pregnant again. I went, hang on, she only delivered about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Oh, 3 weeks, we give them, and then we keep impregnating them. So I said to somebody, get down there quick and make sure you tag that same mother, because I want the mother. I want to rescue all of them. But because of the movie and just my emotional involvement with the movie, I wanted to get Alice out of there. And the man demanded $10,000 because he knew I was in a corner. So we paid the guy. But when we took Alice to the rescue home, she couldn't get out the trailer because she had never, ever seen the sky, never felt the sun, never stood on earth, gravel, or grass. It took her 2 days to move into a corner of the ranch, the corral, and then she scraped together some twigs to make her nest. But she was just mesmerized. Now, the truth is, these poor sows are confined in these gestation crates, can't move. When their babies are born, they sometimes fall on them, kill them. Calves are confined for veal. I mean, it's just horrendous. I mean, I know that the pork industry tried to frighten Paramount in Australia because they didn't want Charlotte's Web to be so publicized. And I said, you know what, guys, they're just intimidating you. All they're worried about is their profit. They don't care about the animals. So Paramount, don't give in, you know. And thank God Paramount stood up and said, no, we're going to do what we're going to do. So God bless them, you know.
Well, it's amazing what somebody like you can do in your area, and we know that other people can do the same thing on whatever level they're at. In these last moments, what is something you would want to wish for these animals, and something to say to people to do that would give them encouragement to move forward?
I just say we have a voice and we know how to do things. We can make telephone calls, we can write up in newspapers, we can do anything. We can volunteer at shelters. We have the ability. Animals just wait there for us to see what's going to happen to them through our actions. And so if anyone sees cruelty, report it. Don't feel, oh, I'm going to upset my neighbor if the poor dog's out there starving. Go report it. That poor dog's in trouble. That poor cat's in trouble. So we have to stand up for the animals. I just want humanity to stand up for animals. That to me is the most important thing. And once we start standing up for them, we'll understand their needs, and we'll understand how desperate they are in certain situations, and the world will become a better place.
Thank you so much for being here and joining us, and I'm sure that you're going to encourage a lot of people to go out and do the same.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions. Go out and make a difference. Go out and report something you see that isn't proper for animals. And remember, don't litter, spay and neuter. Join us next time. Thanks.